in local economy, meaning an important saying, okay, an important idea in the idea of local economy, is an observation about parties well beyond local economy, well beyond even the border between Tennessee and its northeastern neighbors on the way to Washington. And that nostrum is that war is the health of the state. It comes from an essay of a hunchback man who was damaged when he was born by some forceps. He was a university student and perished in the Spanish flu pandemic after World War I. His name is Randolph Bourne. And his essay is a famous essay. It's one of two essays I think you should make note of that discuss effectively local economy, the free market, from the perspective of the war mania, the war mentality that has been fomented for some long time by national government, making people eager to yield themselves to military service and to accept the draft and to not revolt. It is a means. It is an idea. It is an ideology that the state has given to the people by means of instruction, by means of training, and familiar usage. The essay is the state, and the quote in that state is "War is the health of the state." That's you might say the subtitle, because that's the main operative concept in this piece that he wrote in 1918. It was found, I think, in a trash bin as his body, his broken, very small body was gathered up after he died. The other essay is one I'll just mention, of which I'll just mention the author, and it came out in 1926 by a devout Roman Catholic academician, and his name is Carlton M. Hayes. And the title of that piece runs about maybe 15 pages if you print it out online, is Nationalism as Religion. These are very insightful pieces. What's remarkable is that Randolph Bourne was a socialist, and I want to ask Sam Spade now about some of the ideas of this essay, and especially in light, Sam, of Veterans Day being tomorrow. We have charitable efforts being done on behalf of veterans who are, many of them, suffering, homeless, sort of broken people, with summer cares, and there are things where the 600 or so homeless veterans in the area are brought to mind and brought to the open hand of grace and charity. So in a way, I view them in light of what I think you're going to be saying. They are the objects of mercy. We view them as people who need mercy. But what your position, Sam Spade, is kind of a market-oriented, libertarian-oriented perspective. And I think your idea of local economy and the free market is that war is a bad thing. Is that a starting point, or is that just too bland and too vague as a basis of looking at this issue of war and peace and the free voluntary society and marketplace?
Well, that's I certainly would not have a blanket war is a bad thing and never should we engage in it. That's not my argument at all. But my argument is that the only justifications for war are to protect our community and our neighbors in not just locally in Chattanooga if necessary, but broader in terms of the risk of the United States. But the United States ends in the Pacific and the Atlantic Ocean, and the border to the north and the border to the south. And yes, you can say, well, there's Hawaii and there's Alaska, but nonetheless, that's a relatively small amount of territory, borders that we have to defend. Why do we have the largest military in the world by far? I mean, we are bigger than the next 4 or 5 militaries put together in the rest of the world. We have barriers that prevent us from being invaded. You could argue, well, we have to worry about nuclear missile attack. Well, okay, that's why we have a nuclear missile force, to act as a deterrent against nuclear missile attack. Why do we have to have this tremendous? We've been at war for 220 of the 239 years that this country has been in existence. That's a startling piece of information. And so what I want to do, what I want to bring as a suggestion to everybody here, is that I'd like you to recognize that Veterans Day is actually not the name of the holiday that we have coming tomorrow. That holiday is to commemorate what happened on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month of 1918. On that day and that time, the guns in the Great War, the war to end all wars, and that's a very important point, the war to end all wars ended. We had an end to what we were promised by Woodrow Wilson would be the final war that we would have to fight to secure our freedom. And by the way, it's really only the second overseas war we ever fought. You know, the Spanish-American War was very minor. I mean, you can say it's an overseas war, but nonetheless,
it was in Cuba.
It was in Cuba, and it was also in the Philippines. You know, it was actually kind of a minor ruckus. So really, it was the first significant overseas conflict the United States had ever fought. And so what he was really promising the American people when he said, we have to go into this war and end all wars, was not so much that we would end all wars as that we would end all foreign involvement in wars from now on. That was the commitment that he made for us to get us to go into that war. And the consummation of that commitment, the point at which the American people did it and succeeded, was Armistice Day. And it was made a holiday to commemorate the fact that we were not going to fight any more foreign wars. And so what happened? Well, when the powers that be decided we were going to keep fighting wars all over the world, they said, hey, we can't have this name around to embarrass us. And so they changed the name to Veterans Day, a name that was designed to try and make it clear that fighting foreign wars was okay. And so I'd like to talk to the people, your listener here, and say,
I only have one listener.
Your listener, and say, you need to think about the fact that most of the problems that we have in our society now are caused by government overreach, and the main reason we have government overreach is because we have a military that is fighting the entire world. So that's just a point that I want to make. And Armistice Day is probably the first way that you can show that you want us to get out of foreign entanglements, is by not calling this Veterans Day, demanding that we go back to the original name of this holiday, which is Armistice Day, because that's the day we were promised there would be no more foreign wars. And
armistice, in general definition, Sam, is you laying down your arms, right?
Exactly.
The arms, the rifles, the cannon, the tank tread are all quiet now. They're down on the ground.
Exactly. In this particular instance, the World War I did not end in a peace treaty, at least not immediately. A peace treaty was signed a couple of years after the fighting actually stopped. The fighting stopped because everybody agreed to simply stop killing each other and stop trying to take territory and just stop the war.
Let's go to Randolph Bourne's phrase. What does "war is the health of the state" mean? What is it true? Is that a statement that's true, Sam Spade?
Oh, absolutely. That's an extremely insightful statement. What you have, and you can see it today. You can see it today in the United States. Anytime you have a hierarchical government that is determined to pull power to itself and control the rest of the population, they have to have a psychological reason to justify their actions. And in this case, the most effective psychological reason, the one that has been used traditionally by totalitarian states since mankind first came into existence with government, is we are threatened by an external force. We must pull together. We must get together. We must get in step. We must put aside our individual differences and go out and beat the foe. And that is to say, war is the ultimate justification for the suppression of all civil liberties. It is the ultimate justification for the suppression of all dissent, of all individual thought, of all individual action. It is the justification for the health of the state.
This is David Tulis, and your caller is speaking with Sam Spade and me live. What's on your mind?
Interesting discussion. Wall Street funded Hitler. We know that, and we know that socialists and communists and Marxists, whatever you call them, all the isms have been the problem of the world forever, going back to Plato. But can you, and don't hang up on me because I'd like to retort, can you name one action we were involved in that you don't believe we were justified in getting involved in, going back to 1776?
World War I. How about that?
So in other words, because we know the Europeans are kind of wimps.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost like having your sissy little brother that you have to protect. So we were supposed to let the Germans just overtake the English, right?
I wouldn't have said that. First of all, if we had stayed, let me talk about what's probably would have happened if we had stayed out of World War I. All right. The English would have had to sue for peace. They would have had to sue for peace, and they would have taken terms that were a lot more lenient to the Germans. And as a result, I let you speak. I let you speak.
Germans as a people, and they always have been, even prior to it being called Germany. It's just in their blood. They love rules. You know, they love to conquer. Come on, that's how they are as a people. And that's, after World War I
would not say that.
Said, okay, we won't fly any planes. We won't build any planes, and they were doing it secretly. And they claimed they were doing it just to train their pilots for the Olympics. And then look what happened. I mean, these are people that killed 2 million Christians and 6 million Jews. And yeah, it's the German people that are at fault. So we weren't. How about World War II? We're supposed to let that go.
We're supposed to stop it at World War I. If we had stayed out of the fight, the result would have been that Germany would have gotten a more effective peace. They wouldn't have felt necessary to come back for round two. No, let me finish. They would not have felt it was necessary.
They have to be forced into peace, even to today.
I don't think they're forced into peace today.
So
I'm sorry, I don't think they're just inherently bad people in the world. You seem to think they inherently...
After World War I, which war should we have gotten involved in?
World War II.
Okay, so we let the Germans just kill a bunch of Jews and Christians.
I don't care what the Germans are doing as far as Jews, Christians, or anybody else. What I do know is that the Germans would not have been able to break the Soviet Union and vice versa. They'd have killed each other in the process, and both dictatorships would have collapsed into a mess, and Europe would have come out with some sort of...
La La Land, because the Germans almost acquired a nuke before we did. They were very close to doing that. And what about the Japanese? What about the Imperial Empire? We just turn our backs and turn our heads. We just become isolationists, even though we need the rest of the world for goods and services. You know, the entire world trades with each other. I'm sure you realize, the Marine hymn from the halls of Montezuma?
Yes.
The shores of Tripoli. Do you know where that came from?
The halls of Montezuma came from the Barbary pirates.
Exactly. So should Thomas Jefferson back in 1800 not have built 12 warships to attack the Muslims in Tripoli, Libya, with the Marines?
I didn't say he shouldn't have built 12 warships, but no, he shouldn't have sent them into the Tripoli. We shouldn't have been involved in that. Not a problem.
They were charging us $25,000 per ship to pass. The pirates did. And we would just go, okay, we're going to be a bunch of pacifists. We're just going to get kicked around by the rest of the world. I'm thankful we have a strong military. We should double our military budget and tell the rest of the world we are the kings, we are the leaders, we are morally superior, and you screw with the United States or any one of our allies, we will kill you in so many uncertain terms. I would have already bombed North Korea. And I would have taken out Iran's nuclear capabilities. What's Trump waiting for?
Okay, thanks, Mike. Go ahead, Sam.
I don't personally know what Trump is waiting for. Perhaps he has still a semblance of the good sense that he had when he ran for the election. At that time,
he ran as a non-interventionist. He ran as someone who was going to end this abusive spending of the taxpayers' dime and the accretion of gigantic debts to pay for the industrial military complex.
Absolutely. So perhaps there is still some of that good sense in him someplace, in spite of the fact that he seems to have fallen down on most of his other commitments to individual liberty.
All right, so Sam, go ahead.
No.
Well, the question is back to the nostrum of war is the health of the state. That I claim that as a local economy nostrum from Randolph Bourne, saying that the whole mentality of the warfare welfare state are in the end making war against their own people. If you have a nation state, it is inevitably, and you have the sense of the idea that the state is involved in security, as opposed to the more biblical model, which is that the state is passive and concerned about justice with its courts being open. Then you have wars of intervention, you have military adventurism, you have you might say is all the empires of the past have done reaching out, acquisition of land, property, assets, natural resources, and that's what the American empire is all about. Sam,
you're right, and you've also mentioned earlier in the show, I think, an important point, which is the cost that we are all paying is a hidden cost. It's a deferred cost. It's a cost that's going to continue to crush our society for years. And that is all of the veterans that come back with injuries, all the veterans that come back with problems dealing with the rest of the world, all the veterans that come back without the social skills and abilities and technical capabilities that they would have if they had spent that same amount of time out there starting businesses, learning to do certain technologies, learning to become more effective productive citizens, and therefore having a whole lot of experience in doing useful economic activities, as opposed to learning how to kill people. All right, and that's what we have. We have a whole generation of people who know nothing except how to kill people. No wonder they don't fit into
and I think Sam, Mike, the caller, is really just kind of a right-wing nut job. Look, the answer is military. Bomb Iran, bomb North Korea, and there's no sense of in his mind. There's no purpose in treating and negotiating and saying, well, what can we do to serve you? Can we increase our trade? Can we maybe have cultural changes? All of those things would tend to pacify and make mild and moderate any dictator. So I think a dictator, by trade and interaction with his people and ours, loses something of his control. Right? If those people can have just more interactions with people like my listener and people like you, Sam Spade, and the other listener, that country and those people will be better off. And the gospel can go in.
I believe absolutely that is true. I think that most people in the world are interested in just minding their own business. There are bad actors, obviously, nation states that develop governments that are corrupt and intolerable. The obvious example, is the Nazi regime. When that happens, there's a good chance that you're going to wind up with war. It's unfortunately a serious situation, but generally speaking, it's self-limiting. These people kill themselves and they all die, and the rest of the world goes on.
Sam, let me ask you a hard question. In what way is my listener, who's a military man, in what way should other people be thankful to him? In other words, are all veterans heroes? Are all veterans? How should we view them? Should we view them as victims? Should we view them as noble servants of the cause of democracy and the republic? How can we be gracious and yet have a right view of the nature of war and the nature of the warfare state?
Well, it's not a matter of being gracious. It's a matter of viewing the situation as it really is. One of the tenets of our society, it's one that's still in effect, fortunately, it's essential. And that is that the military should be politically neutral. They should be willing to go out and do whatever they have to do to protect our homes, to protect our families. And if they're told that a particular task is doing that, it's not their job to pass judgment on whether that task does it or does not mesh with their objectives. Their task is to do it. And so we need to
because they're not really in control.
Exactly. And so what we need to do is accept that they are doing their job. We need to give them
the recognition.
Servants. They are being faithful servants, and we appreciate that. And we need to reward them for that. We need also to recognize that their masters have sent them on an evil errand. To bomb innocent people all over the world, which is what we are doing, I'm sorry, in most of the areas, to get involved in areas where we do not belong, to try and become the big stick of the world and cow other people into existence, is an evil errand.
Does the military-industrial complex exist, or is that just a name that the left gives to those prosperous businessmen who run military contractors and through the Pentagram?
Oh, no, I have no doubt that it exists, but it does not exist at the level of the average veteran. The average veteran is like you and me. He is doing what he has been told to do because that is his compact with the rest of us. He is going to go out and defend us according to the dictates of those that run the system. He's not getting wealthy on it. The military-industrial complex higher up is, and they're corrupting the entire system. It absolutely exists, but it is not the fault of the veteran.
And we have proof that there's a damage in local economy from the national narrative, the national pro-war, military-industrial complex, and that is against individuals. And there are, according to Summer Cares, the shoebox gift-raising effort, there are about at least 600 homeless men in the area, mostly men, who are veterans. And it's fair to say that probably in the case of many, their internal damage or psychological damage, their spiritual enemy perhaps comes from their having been ground to powder in that machinery. And there are shoeboxes being taken up. And today, at just FYI, today at 11 o'clock at Community Kitchen, there'll be an event where a little bit of a chat, some food, and Summer Care's grace boxes will be given to hopefully a good number of veterans who might be there. It's called the Shoebox Campaign, Summer Cares. This is David Tulis and Sam Spade. Thanks for helping us think through these issues.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
David Tulis, we're glad that you're giving us just a couple of minutes of your time. I argue that you should love your neighbor and buy local. We're brought to you by the Jim McCoo Law Firm. And I suggest that near is better than far, small than big, and simple than complex. And down in the footnotes, sans serif type Helvetica, which is the Swiss type, neutral. It's neutral. Personal is better than corporate, and physical than abstract.
Traffic, news, and information. Nooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM. 3, 2.